They called my 340 mozzarella company a hobby and cut me from Thanksgiving. They don't know I bought a 6 Mandlers ranch. I invited everyone they excluded. Photos go live. I'm about to reply. My phone has been vibrating in my hand for 5 minutes straight. I'm sitting on the porch of my newly purchased ranch in Montana, wrapped in a blanket, watching the comments multiply under the photos of yesterday's Thanksgiving dinner. The golden light of sunset, a long wooden table covered with a white tablecloth, plates of turkey and roasted vegetables, the smiling faces of the guests, 23 people. None of them are my mother, my sister, or her husband. Among the guests is Aunt Ruth, who was not allowed to speak at Grandpa's funeral 2 years ago because Mom decided she was too emotional and would ruin the ceremony. Cousin Marlene, who was forgotten to be invited to Janice's wedding 5 years ago due to a modest budget, even though the wedding cost $70,000. Gloria, my mother's former best friend, with whom Beverly stopped communicating after Gloria's business went bankrupt. I can't associate with failures, Clara, you understand, my mother explained, when I asked why Gloria no longer came over for coffee. The comments under the photo multiply. What a wonderful gathering. Clara, you look happy. Thank you for the invitation. It was the best Thanksgiving of my life. And then others appear. Hygienist. Westbrook. Clara, what is this? Why didn't you tell me you were planning something like this? Beverly Westbrook. Honey, let's talk. Call me, you Trent Holloway. Looks cool, sis. Too bad we couldn't be there. I put my phone down and look at the mountains. The air here is different. Clean, cold, crisp. When the real estate agent showed me this ranch 3 weeks ago, he said, $6 million is a fair price for this view and this land. I replied, I'll take it, knocking the price down from $8 to $6 million. I had already made my decision before I even stepped inside the house. 3 weeks ago, I received a message from my mother. Janice is hosting Thanksgiving at her house and has invited Trent's colleagues and a few important people. Space is limited, but you won't be offended, will you? You always understand. I reread that message 10 times. You always understand. Yes, I understood. I had understood for 11 years. 11 years ago, Grandpa Walter left me Deliver Ease, a small transportation company that was barely staying afloat. I was 22 at the time, having just graduated from technical college with a degree in logistics and supply chain management. The family gathered after the funeral, and my mother said, "Sell it, Clara, before it goes completely under. Take the money and get a normal job." Janice added, "Seriously, why do you need the headache? Grandpa just didn't know who else to give it to." But I didn't sell it. I remembered how my grandfather showed me his office. A small room on the outskirts of Phoenix. 3 old trucks, 2 drivers, and a dispatcher who also did the accounting. "Clara, you can build something here," he said. "You just need someone who sees the system, not just the machines." He believed I was that person, so I tried. The first 5 years were hell. I worked as a dispatcher during the day and sat over spreadsheets at night, trying to optimize routes, reduce fuel costs, and find new customers. I took out a loan in my name to buy automation software. I lost my boyfriend because I didn't have time for dates. I missed family dinners because I was working 14 hours a day. My family wasn't interested in the details. At Christmas, my mom would ask, "So how are your trucks?" Janice would roll her eyes. "You still haven't quit that. Claro, you're 30 years old. It's time to think about a real career." Trent, her husband, who owned a chain of car washes, liked to lecture me at the dinner table. Small business is good for a start, but you have to think bigger. The company grew slowly from $200,000 in annual revenue to $1 million in 3 years, then to $5 million. I implemented digital solutions for small suppliers who couldn't afford large logistics platforms. I created algorithms that saved them time and money. Gradually, deliveries became well known. When the company's valuation reached $30 million, I started transferring money to my mom and Janice every month. Family support, as I called it. $10,000 to my mom, 10 to Janice, then 15, then 20. Janice bought a new house in the suburbs of Scottsdale. My mother traded in her car for a newer BMW. No one ever said thank you. It just became the norm. 2 years ago, the valuation rose to $100 million after a deal with a large retail chain. I remember the lunch when I told my family about it. My mom nodded. "That's sweet, honey." Janice said, $100 million is just a valuation, right? It's not real money. Trent added, real business is when you control assets, not some numbers on a spreadsheet. This summer, the valuation reached $340 million after a deal with investors who wanted to scale Deliver Ease nationally. I called my mom to share the news. She was at the mall with Janice. "That's great, Clara. Listen, we're picking out furniture for Janice's new living room right now. I'll call you back later." She didn't call back. And then that message came. Space is limited. I was sitting in my office in Phoenix looking at my phone screen, and suddenly I realized they never considered me an equal. I was the quiet, convenient Clara who didn't cause any trouble and gave money. My company was a hobby. My 11 years of work were something with computers. But Trent's car wash was a real business. I didn't answer my mom. Instead, I called a real estate agent in Montana and said, "Show me the best ranch you have." He showed me 3 options. It was the third one. 200 hectares of land, a stone and wood house, a view of mountains that seemed unreal. And I took it. Then I started making a list: Aunt Ruth, Marlene, Gloria. All those whom the family had once excluded, ignored, forgotten. I personally called each one, "Would you like to come to my house for Thanksgiving?" to Montana. The house is big. There's room for everyone. Ruth cried into the phone. Marlene was silent for 15 seconds, then said, "Are you serious?" Gloria asked, "Does Beverly know?" I replied, "No, and she won't." Yesterday was a perfect day. We cooked the turkey together. Ruth directed the process. Marlene chopped the vegetables, and Gloria mixed the ingredients for the pie. We sat at the table late into the night, telling stories and laughing. Ruth told us how Grandpa Walter used to take her fishing when she was little, and how she wanted to share that story at the funeral, but her mother wouldn't let her. Marlene recalled how Janice told her, "You would look out a place at my wedding anyway. There will only be successful people there." Gloria shared how Beverly stopped answering her phone after she went bankrupt, and a bunch of other stories. I took photos, not for social media, just for myself. But this morning, while everyone was still asleep, I opened the app and posted no captions, just photos of happy people at a festive table against the backdrop of mountains. Now my phone won't stop ringing. Messages from Janice, from Mom, from Trent. I don't open them. Instead, I open the banking app and go to the recurring payments section. 2 transfers. To Mom and Janice, $20,000 each month. I press cancel. I confirm. Done. The phone vibrates again. A call from Janice. I look at the name on the screen, then put the phone on the table and go into the house, where Ruth is already brewing coffee and Marlene is setting the table for breakfast. My first morning on the ranch begins with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and quiet voices in the kitchen. I wake up to sunlight streaming through the wooden blinds, and for a few seconds can't figure out where I am. Then my memory returns. Montana, the ranch, guests who are staying for a few more days. When I go downstairs, Ruth is already standing at the stove, frying eggs. Marilyn is cutting fruit, and Gloria is leafing through a magazine at the table. They all look relaxed, as if for the first time in many years they can just breathe. "Good morning, hostess." Ruth smiles. She is 61. Her gray hair pulled back in a low ponytail, her face lined with wrinkles that come from smiles, not worries. She looks like Grandpa Walter, the same brown eyes, the same soft voice. "Good morning," I reply, pouring myself some coffee. "You didn't have to make breakfast." "I love to cook," Ruth says, "especially when there's someone to cook for. For the last 2 years, I've only been cooking for myself." Marlene looks up from the fruit. She is 38 with dark curly hair and bright green eyes. She works as a nurse at Tucson General Hospital and is raising 2 children on her own after her divorce. Clara, I wanted to thank you for inviting me. I can't remember the last time I felt like part of a family. You've always been part of the family, I say. It's just that someone decided otherwise. Gloria puts down her magazine. She is 54, with short gray hair, elegant even in her home clothes. She once owned a small women's clothing boutique in Scottsdale. Your mother was my best friend for 20 years, she says quietly. We went to yoga together, had lunch every week, shared everything. And then my business went bankrupt. I lost everything because of the pandemic. Rent, unsold merchandise, debts. I called Beverly just to talk. I didn't ask for money. She said, to Gloria, I'm sorry, but I can't keep in touch with people who have financial problems right now. It has a bad effect on my energy. Those were her last words to me. I put the cup down on the table too hard, and coffee sloshes over the edge. She said that? Exactly, Gloria nods. And a week later, I saw her on Instagram at brunch with her new friends. The caption read, "Surround yourself with successful people." Ruth sighs as she transfers the scrambled eggs to plates. Beverly was always like that. Even as a child, if someone made her uncomfortable, she would simply cut that person out of her life. Tell me about Grandpa's funeral, I ask after a pause. I remember that day in fragments. The church, the coffin, people's faces, my mother's instructions. Ruth sits down at the table, her hands trembling slightly. Walter was my younger brother. We grew up together. He was always my best friend. When he died, I wanted to say a few words at the funeral, to talk about what he was like as a child, how he dreamed of his own business, how he loved his family. I even wrote a speech. But Beverly said to me, "Ruth, it will be too long, and you're too emotional, you'll cry and ruin the ceremony. It's better to stay silent." I tried to argue, but she said, "I'm his daughter. I make the decisions." So I just sat there silently while some priest who never knew Walter read some generic phrases about a life well lived. "I'm so sorry," I say, feeling a lump in my throat. "That's not the worst part," Ruth continues. After the funeral, I went up to Beverly to give her a hug. She pulled away and said, "Ruth, I'm not in the mood for drama right now." I wasn't making a scene. I just wanted to support my niece. But for her, even sympathy is drama. Marlene puts her hand on Ruth's shoulder. "Do you know what Janice said to me when I asked why I wasn't on the guest list for her wedding? She said, 'Marlene, you're wonderful, but you're a single nurse with 2 kids. My guests are people with a certain status. You would feel uncomfortable.' I work 12-hour shifts in the intensive care unit, saving lives. But to her, I'm not status enough." We sit in silence for a few minutes, each lost in our own thoughts. Then my phone rings. I look at the screen. Janice, the 5th attempt this morning. I ignore the call. "She won't let up," Marlene says. "Let her call," I reply. But an hour later, as we're all sitting on the porch with tea, the phone rings again. This time I answer it. "Finally!" Janice's voice is sharp and irritated. "Why are you ignoring me? And what's that photo on Instagram?" "Thanksgiving," I say calmly. "I hosted a dinner, just like you." "Why didn't you tell me? We could have come." "Space was limited," I reply, using my mother's words. "I invited people with a certain status." Pause. I hear Janice hold her breath. "Clara, is this about Thanksgiving? Seriously, it was just a misunderstanding?" I interrupt. "Yes, I've heard that version from my mother, a misunderstanding that has been repeated for 11 years. Hey, what are you talking about? About how you called my company a hobby, about how you took my money and bought houses and cars, but never said thank you, about the fact that I'm just a convenient Clara to you who doesn't cause any problems." "You've changed," Janice says, and there's something different in her voice now. Not anger, but fear. "Money changed you." "No," I say. "Money showed you for who you really are." Clara, listen. She tries to change her tone to a conciliatory one, but I interrupt her. I canceled the monthly transfers, I say evenly. No more money. You'll have to take care of yourself. What? Her voice rises. You can't just... I can, I say. And I already have. Have a nice day, Janice. I hang up. My hands are shaking, but the choice has been made. The next 2 days pass quietly. We walk around the neighborhood, cook together, watch old movies. The phone rings constantly, but I no longer answer it. Messages from my mother multiply. Daughter, let's talk like adults. This is childish of you. Janice is in tears. You broke her heart. On the 3rd day, a letter arrives. It's official from the law firm Coleman and Partners. I open the envelope, and the first words make me sit down. Petition to invalidate the will. I read on Beverly Westbrook is filing a lawsuit demanding that Walter Westbrook's will be invalidated on the grounds of his mental incapacity at the time the document was drawn up. It is alleged that there was a previous will, drawn up 5 years before his death, in which Walter distributed the company's assets among all members of the family. It also states that Clara Westbrook used her position as her father's sole caregiver in his final years to manipulate his decisions. I reread it 3 times, not believing it. They are accusing me of manipulation. They claim that my grandfather was incapacitated. They want to take away the company that I have been saving for 11 years. What is it? Gloria asks, seeing the look on my face. I hand her the letter. She reads it, and her face turns pale. That's impossible. Walter was perfectly lucid. They're lying, says Ruth, reading over Gloria's shoulder. Walter never had any cognitive problems. He was sharp as a tack until the very end. I take out my phone and dial my lawyer, Viola Rush. She handled some contracts for deliveries. A tough and professional woman in her 50s. She picks up after the 3rd ring, and I briefly explain the situation to her. Are you in Montana? She asks. Yes. You need to get back to Phoenix. This is more serious than it seems. How serious? Pause. Then Viola says something that makes my heart skip a beat. I'm looking at it right now. They've hired Drake Coleman. He specializes in will contests and has a reputation for winning hopeless cases. If he's taken this on, they're not messing around. They want to take your company, Clara, and they're willing to do whatever it takes. Yeah, I return to Phoenix 2 days later. The plane lands at Sky Harbor Airport at 8 in the morning, and I head straight to Viola's office. Her office is located in a glass tower in the city center. Viola Rush meets me in the conference room where folders with documents are already laid out on the table. She looks the same as always. A strict suit, her hair pulled back into a perfect bun, thin-rimmed glasses, not a single unnecessary emotion on her face. Sit down, she says, pointing to a chair. We have a lot to talk about. I sit down, clasping my hands on my knees. Tell me everything. Viola opens the first folder. Drake Coleman, 58 years old, 30 years of practice, specializing exclusively in will contests. He has won 73% of his cases, including several high-profile ones. In 1929, he convinced the court that a millionaire from Scottsdale had Alzheimer's when he left all his property to his caregiver. The family got everything back. But my grandfather didn't have Alzheimer's, I say. He didn't have any cognitive problems. I know. Viola nods. But Coleman doesn't play with facts. He plays with emotions. He's already gathered witnesses. Dr. Allison Gray is the therapist who treated your grandfather for type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. Coleman claims she noticed signs of cognitive decline, but didn't officially document them. That's not true, I say firmly. I accompanied my grandfather to most of his appointments. Dr. Gray never said anything like that. Viola slides a document toward me. This is her testimony for Coleman. She says, Mr. Westbrook often confused dates and could forget what medications he was taking. I recommended that he undergo a neurological examination, but he refused. Signature, stamp, everything official. I read the text. not believing my eyes. Oh, she's lying. Grandpa never got confused. He kept a calendar on his phone and knew all his appointments by heart. Maybe, says Viola, but Dr. Gray is a respected doctor with 25 years of experience. Her word carries a lot of weight in court, and that's not all. Coleman brought in your grandfather's neighbors, a couple named Baker. They lived next door to Walter for 8 years. They testify that Mr. Westbrook often forgot their names, would go out in his slippers and bathrobe and confuse the days of the week. Grandpa was always a little absent-minded, I say, but that's not dementia. He might have forgotten a neighbor's name because he wasn't interested in his neighbors. He might have gone out in his bathrobe because he didn't care what people thought of him. I understand, Viola says, but the jury didn't know your grandfather. They'll hear confused names, forgot days of the week, and paint a picture of an elderly man with cognitive problems. I lean back in my chair, feeling my head buzzing. Anyone else? Viola flips through the papers. Former housekeeper Carmen Lopez. Worked for your grandfather for 2 years, quit a year before he died. She says, Mr. Westbrook often forgot whether he had already had breakfast, would put his keys in the refrigerator and ask me 3 times a day what day it was. Coleman uses this as evidence of progressive dementia. I remember Carmen, a short woman in her 40s, always quiet. Grandpa fired her because she constantly forgot to do her duties. He fired her for unprofessionalism, I say. She's taking revenge. Probably, Viola agrees. But in court, it will look like testimony from an uninterested third party. I massage my temples, trying to concentrate. What about the medical records? Grandpa has an official medical history. Viola opens another folder. Yes, I've already requested all the records. No diagnoses related to dementia, Alzheimer's, or other cognitive disorders. But Coleman claims that your grandfather's family doctor, Dr. Gray, didn't notice any signs due to infrequent visits. Walter saw her once every 3 months to check his sugar and blood pressure. Coleman says that's not enough to detect the early stages of dementia. And what does he suggest as an alternative? An independent expert? Viola slides another document toward me. Dr. Vernon Schmidt, a psychiatrist specializing in geriatrics. Coleman gave him old videos of your grandfather. Family videos, recordings from his birthday, Christmas. Schmidt analyzed them and prepared a report. He claims to see signs of cognitive decline, slow speech, difficulty finding words, disorientation in space. I read the report and start shaking with anger. This is nonsense. Grandpa spoke slowly because he thought before he said anything. He chose his words carefully because he wanted to be precise. Disorientation in space? It's dancing. And besides being a bad dancer, he's also an elderly man. Viola takes off her glasses and looks at me seriously. Clara, I'm on your side. But you have to understand, cases like this are often won not with facts, but with emotions. The jury will see the old man on video, hear the testimony of the doctor and neighbors, and they will construct in their minds a picture of a vulnerable elderly person who was manipulated. And that someone will be you. They're accusing me of manipulation. Yes, says Viola. Coleman claims that you were Walter's sole caregiver in his final years, that you had exclusive access to him, that you convinced him to change his will in your favor. He even insinuates that you isolated Grandpa from the rest of the family. I laugh sharply without humor. That's absurd. Grandpa didn't want to talk to Mom and Janice. He said they were only interested in his money. But it will sound different in court, Viola warns. Now, Coleman will say an elderly person experiencing cognitive decline becomes suspicious and paranoid. She pushes away her loved ones because someone is whispering to her that they want to take advantage of her. And that someone will be you again. I get up and walk over to the window. Down below on the streets of Phoenix, people go about their business. unaware that somewhere in a conference room, the fate of the company I have built over 11 years is being decided. My phone rings. It's the deliveries office number. I pick up the phone. Clara, sorry to bother you. It's Sheila, my COO. We have a problem with the Rainbow Farms contract. They want to review the terms after that scandal in the news. They say they don't want to be associated with a questionable company. I pinch the bridge of my nose. Rainbow Farms is one of our biggest clients with an $18 million contract per year. Tell them I'll call them personally within the hour and prepare alternative proposals in case they really do pull out. Okay. Also, the investors are asking for a meeting. They're concerned about the lawsuit. Schedule it for tomorrow, I say. I'll be in the office after lunch. I hang up and look at Viola. The scandal is already affecting the business. This is just the beginning, she says. Coleman understands that if Deliveries starts losing customers and partners, your position in court will weaken. He's playing on several fronts at once. What should I do? I ask quietly. Look for evidence, Viola says. We need people who can confirm that Walter was of sound mind. Friends, colleagues, anyone who communicated with him regularly. I think he played chess every week with his neighbor, Mr. Carmichael. They met every Saturday morning. Viola writes it down. Good. Anyone else? His accountant, Stanley Ferguson. They worked together for 30 years. Grandpa trusted him with all his financial matters. Great, I'll contact them. What else? I try to remember. He went to the barber shop on Kestel Street every month. The same barber had been cutting his hair for 20 years. They talked about politics, sports, names, addresses, anything you can remember, Viola says, sliding the notebook toward me. I write down everything I can remember, but somewhere inside I know it might not be enough. Coleman is one step ahead. He's already constructed his version of the story. I need something more. Viola, I say, what if they're not just lying about Grandpa's condition? What if they're planning something else? She looks up. What do you mean? Mom and Janice have never been interested in business. They don't know how to run a logistics company. Why do they want Deliveries if they can't run it? Viola thinks about it. Do you think they want to sell? I'm sure of it, I say. They want quick cash, not long-term management. Is there any way to check? Yes, Viola says slowly, but we'll need someone to dig around. Hire the best, I say. Viola calls someone immediately. 20 minutes later, a man in his 50s arrives at the office. Short, stocky, with gray stubble and attentive eyes. He introduces himself as Larry Tennyson. I need to know who my mother and sister are in contact with, I tell him. Meetings, phone calls, correspondence, everything. Larry nods. It will take time, and it will cost money. Money is not a problem, I say. Time is the problem. How long will you need? A week, he says. Maybe 2. Do it in 3 days, and I'll double what you were going to ask for, I say. He smiles for the first time. I like ambitious clients. I drive to the Deliveries office. It's located in a small business center on the outskirts of Phoenix. 3 stories, open space, large windows. When I walk in, several employees look at me with curiosity and some with caution. News travels fast. Sheila meets me at my office. She is 42 with short dark hair, always wearing jeans and a sweater, never saying a word too many. Rainbow Farms is waiting for your call. Also, Jerry from marketing wants to talk. He says customers are asking questions about the company's stability. I nod. Gather all the managers at 3:15. We'll have a quick meeting. For the next 2 hours, I talk to Rainbow Farms, convincing them that the lawsuit is a family dispute that will not affect operations. I sign additional guarantees and offer a discount for the next quarter. They agree to stay. At 3:15 p.m., I gather the team, the 8 people who keep the company running every day. I know you've seen the news, I say. I know there are questions. I'll be blunt. My family is trying to take the company away from me through the courts. They claim that my grandfather was incompetent when he left Deliveries to me. That's not true. I have evidence, I have a lawyer, and I will fight. But I understand if any of you want to leave. I don't hold people against their will. Silence. Then Sheila says, I've been working here for 7 years. You're the best boss I've ever had. If you say you're going to fight, I'm with you. The others nod. Jerry adds, we built this together. We're not giving up without a fight. I feel something warm spreading through my chest. Thank you, I say quietly. The next 3 days pass in a whirlwind. During the day, I meet with witnesses found by Viola. Mr. Carmichael, the grandfather's neighbor, a 90-year-old man, confirms, Walter beat me at chess a week before he died. If he had dementia, he wouldn't have remembered the rules and tactics. Stanley Ferguson, an accountant and a methodical man with impeccable records, shows me the documents. Walter personally checked every report until the last day. He noticed mistakes that I missed. In the evening, I sort out work issues, contracts that need to be signed, strategic decisions that cannot wait. Investors want a meeting. I convince them that the company is stable. A new client from California has doubts because of the scandal. I personally go to them for a presentation. Late in the evening on the third day, I'm sitting in my apartment watching the news. Suddenly, I see my face on the screen. The reporter says, Scandal in a well-known Arizona family. Beverly Westbrook has filed a lawsuit against her daughter Clara, accusing her of manipulating her late father's will. Then the camera switches to Janice, who is standing outside her house saying into the microphone, My sister has always been ambitious, but I never thought she would do this to our family. Our grandfather loved us both equally, but Clara took advantage of his age and weakness. I turn off the TV. My hands are shaking. They've launched a media campaign. They're making me out to be a thief in public. The phone rings. It's Larry Tennyson. I pick up the receiver. Do you want the good news or the bad? He asks. Start with the bad. Your sister is posting old photos of your grandfather on Instagram. Captions about betraying his memory. The greed of the younger generation. She already has 3,000 reposts. Several experts are commenting on the posts about typical signs of manipulation of the elderly. One of them is Curtis Holbrook, a psychologist from Tempe. I checked. He received a payment from Janice, $5,000. They're bribing experts, I say quietly. Yes, Larry confirms. Now, for the good news, I had your mother followed. The day before yesterday, she met with 2 men at Funnel's restaurant in Scottsdale. I took photos. One of them is Tobias Merrick, CEO of Translogix. I sit up straight. Translogix is one of DeliverEase's biggest competitors. Are you sure? Absolutely, I recorded their conversation. Larry pauses, then adds, Clara, you'd better sit down for this. He sends me an audio file. I turn on the player. I hear my mother's voice. So familiar, so close once. She says, once we regain control, we'll need a buyer. Clara has already ruined the company's reputation with her greed. We want to sell quickly and profitably. Merrick's voice. Translogix is prepared to offer you 40% of the current valuation. That's $136 million. You will receive the money within a month after the court proceedings are completed. Janice's voice. What about the rest of the shares? Merrick. We will take the controlling stake. You can keep the rest or sell them to us later at a lower price. Mom laughs. The main thing is that Clara gets nothing. She's arrogant. She needs to be reminded who's in charge in this family. The recording ends. I sit in silence, feeling something inside me crack completely. They don't just want to take the company. They've already agreed to sell it. They've betrayed not only me, they've betrayed the memory of my grandfather who built DeliverEase over 30 years. The phone rings again. It's Larry. There's something else, he says, and there's a tension in his voice that wasn't there before. I got access to Janice's correspondence. There's a draft agreement between your mother and Translogix. The date is 2 days after the lawsuit was filed. They planned this in advance, Clara. This isn't an impulsive decision. It's a conspiracy, and I'm sending you a copy right now. The morning of the court hearing begins with cold rain. I stand at the window of my apartment, looking at the gray clouds over Phoenix, trying to pull myself together. A dark blue suit hangs on the hanger. Viola insisted on a strict but not mournful look. "You have to look like a successful businesswoman, not a victim," she said yesterday. The Maricopa County Courthouse looks massive and cold. Beige stone, tall columns, glass doors. Journalists with cameras are already waiting in front of the entrance. I get out of the car and immediately hear, "Miss Westbrook, any comment on the charges? Is it true that you manipulated your grandfather? How will you respond to your mother's allegations?" Viola walks beside me, her hand on my elbow, lightly but firmly. "No comment," she says, and we walk through the crowd into the building. The courtroom is packed. I see Mom and Janice on the opposite side, sitting next to their lawyer. Drake Coleman looks exactly as I imagined him. Tall, gray-haired, expensive suit, expressionless face. Mom is wearing a black dress, mourning attire, even though Grandpa died more than 10 years ago. Janice is in a light gray suit, her hair pulled back, her makeup perfect. They look like victims. The judge enters, a woman in her 60s, stern with short gray hair. "Judge Roberta Miller," says the nameplate on her desk. She sits down, looks at both sides, and says, "Let's begin. The case of Beverly Westbrook versus Clara Westbrook regarding the contestation of a will. Mr. Coleman, your opening statement." Coleman stands up. His voice is deep and convincing. "Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is about a vulnerable elderly man who was manipulated in the last years of his life. Walter Westbrook was a wonderful man, a loving grandfather, the founder of a successful business. But in the last years of his life, he changed. He became suspicious, withdrawn, and pushed his family away. We say why? Because someone whispered to him that they wanted to use him. That person was his granddaughter, Clara Westbrook. I clench my hands under the table. Viola puts her hand on mine, a warning. Don't react. Coleman continues. "We will prove that Walter Westbrook suffered from cognitive impairment at the time of making his last will and testament. We will prove that he was incapable of making such important decisions. And we will prove that his granddaughter took advantage of this weakness for her own benefit." He sits down. The judge looks at Viola. "Ms. Rush?" Viola stands up. She looks calm and confident. "Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is not about a vulnerable elderly man. It is about greed. Walter Westbrook was perfectly of sound mind when he made his will. He knew what he was doing. He left his business to his granddaughter, who had saved him from bankruptcy for 11 years, who worked day and night, who turned a small transportation company into a successful enterprise. And his daughter and second granddaughter? They took money but never took an interest in the business until it was worth $340 million. Coleman begins calling witnesses. The first is Dr. Allison Gray. She's about 50, with straight gray hair and glasses. She takes the oath and takes the stand. "Dr. Gray, did you treat Walter Westbrook?" Coleman asks. "Yes, I was his therapist for 15 years. Describe his condition in the last years of his life." Gray pauses. "Mr. Westbrook had type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. These are controllable conditions, but they can affect cognitive function." "Did you notice any signs of cognitive decline?" "Yes. He got confused about dates, forgot what medications he was taking. I recommended a neurological evaluation, but he refused." I lean over to Viola and whisper, "That's not true. He never got confused." Viola nods. "I know. Wait." Coleman continues. "Why do you think he refused the examination?" "Perhaps he wasn't aware of the problem. That's typical of people with cognitive impairment." Coleman sits down. Viola stands up for cross-examination. "Dr. Gray, you claim that Mr. Westbrook was confused about dates. Do you have any records of this in his medical file?" Gray hesitates. "No, it was an oral observation." "And forgetting his medication? Is that also an oral observation?" "Yes." "So there are no official records of cognitive problems in his medical records?" No, but that is my judgment as a specialist. And, thank you, Viola interrupts. One more question. How many times a year did you see Mr. Westbrook? 4 times, once a quarter. 4 times a year, 15 minutes per appointment. And based on that, you diagnose cognitive decline? Coleman stands up. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is disparaging the witness. Overruled, the judge says. Continue, Miss Rush. Viola looks at Gray. Have you received any compensation for your testimony today? Gray answers. I was reimbursed for my time. How much? $5,000 as an expert witness. The next witnesses are the Bakers, the grandfather's neighbors. They tell stories about how Walter forgot their names and went out in his slippers. Viola says that the grandfather was simply not interested in his neighbors, that he wore slippers because they were comfortable. But here things get worse. Then Carmen Lopez, a former housekeeper, takes the stand. She talks about keys in the refrigerator and forgotten breakfast. Viola shows documents about her dismissal. The reason? Systematic failure to perform duties. Coleman calls Dr. Vernon Schmidt, a psychiatrist. Schmidt shows videos of the old man, birthdays, Christmas, other videos. He analyzes each frame, pointing out slowed speech and difficulty finding words. It looks convincing, too convincing. During the break, I say to Viola, he really seems like he knows what he's talking about. He does, Viola replies, but he's analyzing videos taken at family celebrations. Your grandfather was old and tired in those videos. That's not dementia. That's normal aging. After the break, Coleman calls Beverly. My mother takes the stand, and I see her wiping away tears. She has always been able to cry on cue. Mrs. Westbrook, tell us about your father, Coleman says gently. Mom speaks softly, her voice trembling. My father was a wonderful man. He loved his family more than anything. He always said he wanted us to be together, to support each other. Did he change in the last years of his life? Yes, Mom nods. He became withdrawn. He stopped answering my calls and rarely saw us. I didn't understand why, and only after his death did I realize that someone was influencing him. Who? My daughter Clara. My mother looks at me, and in her eyes I see something like pain, but I know it's an act. She was with him all the time. She took care of him, but at the same time isolated him from the rest of the family. Your Honor, Viola stands up. That's an assumption, not a fact. Seconded, says the judge. Mrs. Westbrook, stick to the facts. Coleman continues. Did you know about your father's last will and testament? No, says Mom. He never told me about it. I only found out after his death. Did that surprise you? Yes. My father always said he wanted to leave the business to the family, to all of us. He loved both of his granddaughters equally. Coleman sits down. Viola approaches the stand. Mrs. Westbrook, you claim that your father wanted to leave the business to the family. Do you have any evidence of that? He said so many times. When was the last time? Mom hesitates. I don't remember exactly, but definitely before he started distancing himself from us. So you can't confirm when exactly he said it? No, but tell me, Mrs. Westbrook, when was the last time you visited your father? Mom turns pale. A month before he died. A month. And before that? 3 months. And between those visits, did you call him? Sometimes. How often? Several times a week, sometimes less, sometimes more, but he didn't answer the phone. Viola approaches the table and picks up a folder. Your Honor, I would like to show Mr. Westbrook's call records for the last year of his life. She hands the documents to the judge. Beverly Westbrook called her father 7 times in a year, 7 times, and Clara Westbrook called him 360 times, almost every day. There is whispering in the courtroom again. Mom looks down. Viola continues. Mrs. Westbrook, did you receive financial assistance from your daughter Clara? Yes, she helped out sometimes. Sometimes. Let me clarify. Clara transferred $20,000 to you every month for the last 3 years. That's $480,000 in total. Is that sometimes? Mom is silent. And you never thanked her? How is that relevant to the case? Coleman stands up. I second that, Your Honor. Irrelevant. I second that. The judge nods. It's not relevant to the case. Viola finishes. No further questions. Then Coleman calls Janice. My sister walks to the stand confidently, but I can see her clenching her hands. She's scared. Janice tells her side of the story. Clara was always Grandpa's favorite. She knew how to influence him, how to get what she wanted. I don't blame her, but... Viola interrupts during cross-examination. Miss Westbrook, did you ever work at deliveries? No. Were you ever interested in your grandfather's business? I had my own things going on. Did you receive financial assistance from your sister? Yes. How much? $20,000 a month. And what did you do with that money? Janice looks confused. What do you mean? Viola shows her the documents. You bought a house for $450,000, a car for $60,000, membership in a private club, $10,000 a year, all with money your sister earned by saving your grandfather's company. Janice is silent, and now you want to take that company away from her. That's not true. Janice raises her voice. It's a fair distribution. Fair? Viola takes out a folder. Your Honor, I would like to present Exhibit Number 12, an audio recording of a conversation between Beverly Westbrook, Janice Holloway, and Tobias Merrick, CEO of Translogix. Coleman jumps up. Objection! Where did this recording come from? From a private investigator acting within the law, Viola says. The conversation took place in a public place. The judge considers. I allow it. Play the recording. My mother's voice echoes through the courtroom. Once we regain control, we'll need a buyer. Clara has already ruined the company's reputation with her greed. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Coleman tries to object, but the recording continues. Merrick's voice about $136 million. My mother's laughter. The main thing is that Clara gets nothing. When the recording ends, the judge bangs his gavel. Silence in the courtroom. Viola looks at the jury. This case is not about mental incapacity. It's about conspiracy for money. No further questions. Then it's my turn. I walk up to the stand, my legs barely holding me up. Viola asks simple questions. How long I worked for the company, how I saved it, how much money I gave to the family. I answer calmly, but inside I'm shaking. Coleman comes over for cross-examination. Miss Westbrook, you claim that you loved your grandfather, but you isolated him from his family, didn't you? No, he didn't want to communicate with them. Why? Because they were only interested in his money. Is that your assumption? Or did he tell you that? He said so himself. Coleman smiles. But your grandfather suffered from cognitive impairment. Perhaps he was paranoid. He wasn't paranoid, I say firmly. He was smart, and he saw the truth. The hearing lasts 3 days. Witnesses, evidence, arguments. Finally, the judge says, the decision will be announced in a week. I leave the courtroom under a flurry of camera flashes. Journalists shout questions, but I can't hear anything. Viola leads me to the car. The week passes in a fog. I don't sleep, I hardly eat. Work at deliveries continues, but I'm on autopilot. Finally, the day of the verdict arrives. I'm back in the courtroom. The judge enters and says, the court has considered all the evidence. Walter Westbrook's will is declared valid. The evidence of mental incapacity is insufficient. Deliveries remains the property of Clara Westbrook. I hear the words, but I don't feel relieved. Only emptiness. I won, but what exactly? The company? Yes. My family? No, they are gone. I look at my mother and Janice. They sit motionless, their faces stony. Then my mother gets up and leaves without looking at me. Janice follows her. Viola puts her hand on my shoulder. You won, Clara? But as I walk out of the courthouse in the rain, I realize that victory has a taste of ashes. I saved my grandfather's company, but I lost everything else. And somewhere deep down, a voice whispers, was it worth it? 5 months after the trial, I sit in my office at Deliveries and look at a message from Viola. The prosecutor's office has closed the case against Beverly and Janice. TransLogix claims that the meetings were only preliminary consultations without any obligations. There is insufficient evidence to bring a criminal case. I put my phone down on the table and look out the window. Phoenix looks the same as always behind the glass. Sun, palm trees, cloudless sky. It's as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. They escaped punishment. Legally, yes. Well, but I know from the news that their lives fell apart. Trent filed for divorce 2 months after the trial. A public scandal, an audio recording of the conspiracy, his name in the headlines. He couldn't take it. Janice lost her house in Scottsdale and moved in with her mother. They are living on savings that are quickly dwindling. I heard through mutual acquaintances that her mother sold her new BMW and went back to her old Honda. Their club membership was canceled. Their friends stopped calling. Without my monthly payments, they have to significantly cut back on their appetites. I don't feel any satisfaction from this, only emptiness. Sheila enters the office with folders. The contract with Silver Vale has been signed. Also, investors from Portland want a meeting next week. They are interested in expanding to the Pacific Coast. I nod. Okay, set it up. She hesitates at the door. Clara, you look tired. Maybe you should take a day off. I smile, weakly, but still. Maybe soon. When she leaves, I open my calendar. December 23rd. Christmas is in 2 days. Last year, I spent it with my mom and Janice. I sat at their table, listened to conversations about things that didn't interest me, smiled at the right moments. I tried to be part of something that never really accepted me. This year is different. The next day, I close the office for the holidays and drive to Montana. The trip takes 6 hours, through the desert, then the mountains, then the forests. When I pull up to the ranch, the sun is already setting behind the peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The ranch greets me with silence. I open the door, bring in my suitcases, and light the fireplace. I sit on the porch with a cup of tea and watch as the sky darkens and the stars appear. It's different here than in Phoenix. Here you can breathe. Ruth, Marlene, and Gloria arrive the next morning. We hug on the doorstep and I feel something warm spreading through my chest. We spend the day together, cooking, talking, laughing. Ruth tells stories about her grandfather that I've never heard before. Marlene shows me photos of her children. They've grown so much in the last few months. Gloria shares her news. She found a job in a small boutique, back on her feet after bankruptcy. I thought it was all over, she says. After the business failed, I lost everything. Friends, confidence, meaning, but then you invited me here for Thanksgiving. And I realized that life doesn't end until you decide it's over. I squeeze her hand. Thank you for coming then. And now. In the evening, we sit at the table. Turkey, potatoes, vegetables, Ruth's pie. Everything is simple, without pretension. But that's why it's perfect. During dinner, the phone rings. I look at the screen. Janice, the first call in 5 months. Ruth sees my face. Who is it? My sister, I say quietly. Marlene leans over. Are you going to answer it? I look at the phone. It rings, vibrating in my hand. Part of me wants to answer, to hear what she has to say, maybe hear an apology. But another part, a bigger, wiser part, knows there will be no apology. There will be excuses, or another attempt at manipulation. I place the phone on the table, screen down. Not yet, Gloria nods. The phone goes silent, then it rings again immediately. I ignore it. A third call, a fourth. Finally, they stop. A message arrives. I don't open it. After dinner, we sit by the fireplace. Ruth talks about Walter. what kind of person he was in his youth, how he dreamed of owning his own business, how he loved his family. I think about it. Mom and Janice had my last name, but they were never there when I needed them. They were there when they needed something. Late at night, when everyone has gone to bed, I sit alone on the porch. The cold air stings my face, but I like it. I look at the mountains, the snow-capped peaks in the moonlight, and think about the last 6 months, the court case, the betrayal of my family, the fight for the company. A victory that brings no joy. I won legally, but emotionally, I lost. Mom and Janice are no longer in my life. Not because I kicked them out, but because they showed me who they really are. I open my laptop. It's lying on the table next to me. I open a new document and start writing. Not for anyone in particular, just for myself. Grandpa, I saved your business. Deliveries is now valued at $340 million. We're expanding to the Pacific Coast, signing contracts with major clients, hiring new people. The company you built over 30 years is thriving. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that I have preserved what you instilled in me: honesty, self-confidence, the understanding that success is not about money, but about who you remain when you earn it. Mom and Janice tried to take the company away from me. They said you were incompetent, that I was manipulating you. They lied. But I proved the truth. Not for them, for myself. To know that I am worthy of what you left me. Now they are out of my life. And you know what? It doesn't hurt. It's a little empty, yes. But it doesn't hurt. I don't know if you're proud of me. I hope so. I tried to do everything right. It didn't always work out, but I tried. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for leaving me not just a company, but the belief that I can build something. I built it, and I continue to build. I hope that where you are now, you know about it. Always yours, Clara. I reread the text, then I close my laptop without saving it. This letter doesn't need to be saved. It has already done its job, it allowed me to say what I wanted to say. On the last evening before returning to Phoenix, I sit on the porch again. My phone is lying nearby, turned off, and I haven't checked it in 2 days. No messages from Janice, no calls from Mom. Maybe they understand, maybe not. But that's not my problem anymore. I look at the stars. There are millions of them here, many more than in Phoenix. And I think, I didn't win the war with my family. I just walked away from it. I stopped fighting for what was never really mine. Their approval, their love, their respect. Instead, I'm building something of my own. A company that is thriving. A life that I enjoy. Relationships with people who appreciate me. And that's not a victory. It's something better. It's freedom. I turn on my phone. One new message from Sheila. The client from Seattle has agreed to the contract, signing in January. Congratulations! I smile. Life goes on. Business is growing. I'm moving forward. I don't know what will happen next. Whether my mother will call again, whether Janice will try to reconnect, whether they will ever forgive me for not giving up. But I know one thing. I'm no longer waiting for their forgiveness. I'm not waiting for their approval. I'm building my life with people who value me, with a business I love, with choices that set me free. And this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something new, something that belongs only to me. I smile into the darkness, wrap myself in a blanket, and watch the moon slowly rise above the mountains, illuminating the snow-capped peaks with silver light. Somewhere out there, in Phoenix, Mom and Janice are living their lives. And I'm living mine. And that's the best decision I could have made.